Have you ever been in a meeting where you're listening to the other people talk and you're thinking to yourself in your head, this plan is absolutely doomed? But then because there's so many people in the meeting and maybe there's a lot of senior people that are older than you in the meeting that are speaking and giving their thoughts, you feel like you shouldn't tell everyone that you disagree with the current approach. And what ends up happening is everyone agrees on this new plan, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, a bunch of issues come up. And because you are the junior employee on the team and you have to do most of the grunt work, a lot of these issues end up falling onto you. And you find yourself thinking about how 2 or 3 weeks ago, if only you had raised your voice in that meeting and disagreed, then things could have been a little bit different. Now, this is exactly the situation that I found myself in about 2 years ago when I was working in management consulting, where I did not want to disagree with a partner on the case team, even when in reality I knew that the approach that he wanted to go down wasn't going to make sense because I was the closest to the analysis and I was the one building a model for a particular client. And if you're watching this video, then that probably means that you are a junior or mid-level employee at a company, and that often means that you need to diplomatically manage your manager and their expectations in meetings. And it's actually really, really important to be able to disagree with someone at work in a corporate setting where you can't just outright say, hey, you're wrong, or hey, I don't agree with that. Now, in most scenarios, you kind of have to go about it in a diplomatic way, which is exactly what I'm going to explain to you today. And before we get into the tactics of it, I do want to spend some time talking about why it matters to be able to disagree and push back against other people on your team, even if it's uncomfortable. Studies have actually shown that teams that are silent, aka teams that don't disagree with their manager, with their boss, or with other teammates, when they hear something and they think to themselves, oh, I don't know if this is the right move, or maybe, I would have gone about it a different way. Teams that don't voice their real opinions and lack that psychological safety actually underperform in the long run. Now, this might be a little bit counterintuitive, but on the other hand, teams that disagree with each other a lot end up doing better in the long run. And the reason for this is even though in the short run, they may run into more arguments or more conflict, in the long run, this actually helps people to make better overall decisions, which enhances their performance. And so, if not just simply for yourself, for the benefit of your team, you should learn how to disagree and push back against the other people that you work with. But now let's move and talk about what should we do when we want to disagree with someone at work. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the mindset that you need to go into whenever you disagree with someone. It's very easy to instinctually default to the gut reaction, the more animalistic response when you hear something that you don't like, which is to instantly tense up and to be very combative and let your lizard brain almost take over where you don't even want to hear what they have to say. And so instead of being combative, because being combative is not going to help anyone out, and also once the other person sees that you're being combative, they're just going to close up as well and also be defensive, you want to approach it from a perspective and from a stance of being curious and genuinely interested in what they have to say. And so this doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but it means that you should demonstrate that you're actually interested in the approach that they're proposing, or you actually want to listen to what they have to say. So instead of just like waiting so that you can as soon as possible say some smart sounding rebuttal to what they just said, you should genuinely stop and nod and listen to what they have to say and acknowledge that what they're saying is valid, even if you don't necessarily agree. That's going to be step one, because it is going to disarm someone, especially if they feel very strongly about their opinion. You don't want to be combative, because the instant that they see that you're combative, they are just going to instantly also become combative, as I said. And so if you approach it from curiosity and you ask genuine questions and you actually seem like you're listening to them and hearing what they have to say, then they're going to be a lot more open to another perspective. But again, the thing I want to emphasize here is that your tone is going to be everything here. It doesn't matter what words are coming out of your mouth when you are talking to this person. If you are talking to them with a very accusational tone, and you're saying things like, oh yeah, you said this, and the stats are showing something else, like, why would you even say that? They're gonna be instantly like, what the heck? This person is not a team player. They are trying to delay progress. They don't want to do anything done. Maybe they're just lazy and they're just trying to give me reasons why I can't accomplish my goal. So you have to be very careful, and you need to make sure that your tone, again, is a genuine one, where you're genuinely being like, okay, that makes sense. I can see where you're coming from. If I were also looking at this data set, then I would also instinctually look at it and interpret it in this way. However, and then you go into your actual explanation. And so just want to emphasize, the tone is really, really important here. And so it's not just about what you have to say, it's about how you say it as well. But with that, let's talk about the 5-step framework that you can use to effectively and diplomatically disarm people and disagree with them, and hopefully get them to take your side, or at least come to some sort of compromise, a midway point between both of your perspectives. Let's get into it. So the first step is going to be acknowledge. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying about being genuinely curious, because you need to have a little bit of empathy and put yourself in their shoes. Think about how they feel, right? They've just proposed this idea. Maybe they've spent a day thinking about it. Maybe they've spent a week working on this thing, and they're going to this meeting, they're very proud of the work that they've done, and they really, really strongly believe that this is the right approach. And so the worst thing that you can do right then and there is to immediately devalue whatever they just said and write it off instantly, which is going to make them feel horrible, right? And so they're definitely not going to like you, and they're not going to want to agree with you, most certainly. And so we need to acknowledge what they've said. And so what this may look like is, for example, if you're an engineer and you're working with a product manager, and the product manager has been bugging you about, hey, why can't we ship this feature in the next 4 weeks? What's the holdup? And they don't believe you when you're telling them about all these different things, then a way that you can talk to them and acknowledge their position is to say, look, I totally feel you. I know that this is a huge priority for management for us to ship this new feature, and I know you're really excited about launching this and putting it out into the market for users. And so, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what makes you think that this feature can be launched in 4 weeks, or at least give me a little bit more detail on how you're thinking about launching this feature over the next 4 weeks, right? And so that's the next step here, which is to listen and to genuinely ask them questions about how they're thinking about it, because you want to dig a little bit deeper and really understand their position and where they're coming from, and also understand their underlying thought process, right? And so you should ask them questions about why they want to go about with this approach. And then finally, once you've listened to it and you've learned enough, you can move into the third step, which is to inform them on your POV. And usually this is where maybe you bring in information that they don't previously have. And maybe this is information that you have because you're the engineer and you're the closest to the data or to the analysis, to the code in this case. And so you can tell them, look, I totally get it. You are very excited to ship this. This is a management priority. We're also really excited to try and get this out the door as soon as possible. But that said, I noticed from the last 2 feature releases that we constantly ran into bugs and things took twice as long. And so just trying to be realistic and plan ahead here, I anticipate that it's actually probably not going to take us 4 weeks. It'll probably take us a few weeks longer because we may run into additional bugs that need to get fixed in the code. And so just want to be realistic there because we don't want to overpromise, and obviously that wouldn't look good on your part either. And so you try to take their position and also inform them on information that you have that's relevant to whatever their end goal is, which in this case for a product manager, they really want to ship that feature and get it out into market to be in users' hands, but also recognize that if they ship a feature and there's bugs in it, then that's not going to be good for them either. It's not going to look good for the product manager because their whole goal is to create a great product and make sure that users have a great experience. And so the fourth step you want to focus on is after you've informed them about these issues or the reason why you don't agree with them, you then want to give them a few options. And this part is important because in order to not come across as just a complainer or somebody who perpetually just tries to delay progress, what you want to do is you want to demonstrate that, hey, I'm proactive and I'm a solution-oriented employee and I actually want to get stuff done. So I'm going to propose an alternative for you that hopefully still gets you to a close or similar outcome, but in a different way that I think is better, aka my approach, why my approach is going to be successful. And so in this case, it might be like, look, I think, maybe there's another way, and instead of shipping it in 4 weeks, we take 6 weeks and we really, really focus on debugging the code, making sure everything is production ready before we ship it. And obviously the trade-off here is that it's going to take a little bit longer, but I think like once we actually do put it out into the market, we're going to see really great results and we're going to hit our targets for the quarter, for example. And so, if that doesn't work, then, open to discussing alternative solutions, but that's how I'm thinking about it right now. So you want to give them options. And then finally, the last step is negotiate, right? Because they are going to say something back to you. Maybe they're going to disagree with you. Maybe they're going to push back against you. And so here again, you want to just remember, approach everything from a curious perspective. Do not be combative, because the moment that you demonstrate that you're combative, things just get a little bit too heated, and that doesn't allow you, both of you, to have like an actual logical, problem-solving oriented conversation. And instead, being combative just makes everybody want to fight. And so when you negotiate, you need to be really careful about how you go about it. And again, be very respectful, be very curious, and hopefully, if they don't want to accept your solution 100%, you can reach some sort of middle ground compromise where you and that other person get a little bit of what you wanted, but you don't have to, say, take their entire position and they also get a little bit of what they wanted as well. And so, again, you want to start with acknowledging what they've said in their solution. You want to listen and ask more questions to really show that you're trying to learn more and to understand their position a little bit better. And then you want to inform them about some additional information that you have which could change the situation for them, while also giving options that hopefully they can agree on and negotiating with them about a middle ground solution if they don't want to completely take the approach that you've proposed. And so if you can do this in your meetings at work, I guarantee you are, one, going to be helping your team out, because overall in the long run, a team that's able to disagree and push back against each other often makes better decisions. But two, you're also going to be a lot more confident in your ability to speak up in meetings and to push back against people, even if they are, say, more senior than you, because you're coming to them from a position of respect instead of just disagreeing and being like, oh, I don't want to do that, or I disagree with you. Instead, you're showing them that you're being thoughtful about it and you're considering the best possible alternative to the solution that they've proposed. And the other thing that I'll say from just an overall mindset perspective is, look, if you feel like you are going to get in trouble for disagreeing with your boss at work, then one, that may be a problem with your workplace and you may want to reevaluate the culture at your workplace, because I genuinely believe that a positive work culture should allow and make the employees feel comfortable speaking up and voicing their opinions and letting people know when they disagree with how things are being done. But two, I think you should also really understand that, again, if they don't like what you have to say when you disagree with them, even after you've followed these 5 steps and you've made sure that your tone is respectful and you've approached it from a place of curiosity as opposed to being combative, then that is a them problem and it's not a you problem. And so definitely do not take it personally, and just realize that, look, it takes a lot of courage to speak up and to stand firm and have conviction in your approach. And if they can't recognize that and respect that you can have a different opinion than them, then that is probably an issue with them and not with you. Because the thing is, if you don't learn how to respectfully push back against people at work, then there are just going to be a lot of situations that come up in the future where maybe you get taken advantage of, or people put a lot of work onto you because they know that you're not going to say no. And trust me, I'm not 100% amazing at this either. I genuinely have struggled for the longest time with pushing back because I'm such a yes man and I just want to say yes to everything, and I want to show people that I'm such a hard worker and that I deserve to be promoted. But at the same time, what I've realized is, look, part of being someone that your boss can trust is to be someone that's also able to stand firm in your opinions based on the information that you know, because oftentimes as junior employees, we are the closest to the information, the data, the analysis, what have you. We are the boots on the ground. And so even if, for example, you're working in consulting and your senior managing partner is telling you one thing, but you're the one who's been doing the work, looking at the data, combing through everything, being in the weeds, you actually have a closer perspective and a more accurate view of the data than he does or she does. And so you shouldn't feel scared to speak up and genuinely ground your convictions in the data, because at the end of the day, they can't dispute that. But anyways, I hope that this made sense, and I hope that this was helpful for those of you who are currently working or maybe doing internships this summer if you're a student. And if you found this one helpful, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.